All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, as you can see, I am in the classroom right now. Okay, so I'm not usually I'm at home, but today's a special reason, because it's the end of the grading period. So, if you're in my class, you need to make sure that you turn in all your work for this week. All right. Now, today's lesson, we're going to be talking about several things. First, we're going to talk about the Monroe Doctrine. We're going to talk about the railroad industry, and we're going to be talking about uh, some inventions. Okay, so that's what your objectives are. Analyze some new inventions and improvements that made life easier for people in the 1800s. We'll examine the reason for railroad expansions and create an argument on whether President Monroe really cared about Latin American countries. So let's go to your warm up. All right, so here is your warm up picture. Um, what I'm asking you here is to look at it, analyze it, and tell me what is the person you see there? That's a farmer. What is the farmers and the railroad industry? What is this artist trying to say about them, their relation? From what you can see, what do you think? Okay. Now, uh, some students in class mentioned that the railroad resembles a particular animal, several animals actually. The front looks like a certain animal, and then the way the train cars move reminds them of another animal. So if you want to add that in, by all means, add that in because that shows description of the railroad industry and how this artist basically views them. Okay, so pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so December 1823, President Monroe issues the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine is a document, basically, it's a statement to the world, and it's telling them that the American continents should no longer be viewed as open to them. No more exploration, no more colonization, no more saying, oh, we discovered this new country or this new land. No, you didn't. Because in North America, Central America, and South America, it's already been discovered. And thing is, too, a lot of countries down south, like in Colombia, Bolivia, Uruguay, Peru, things like that, they're starting to fight against Spain and gain their independence. So that's why he's saying, don't come over here, you know, you don't try to take over them. Respect their sovereignty, meaning their control over their country. Okay. So he's saying all that stuff to the rest of the world about the Latin American countries. But here's the issue. At this time in 1823, um, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Colorado, um, Utah, parts of Oregon belongs to Spain and eventually would belong to Mexico. Now ask yourself this: who does all those states, California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, who do they belong to now? So here's the president saying, don't invade them, respect them as a country, don't, respect their borders and some of that. But yet now we know that those states belong to us, but they used to belong to another country like Mexico. Okay, so keep that in the back of your head, okay, because that's going to come up next week's lesson. Yeah, next week's. Yeah. Now, transportation back then was really, really slow. If you wanted to take something heavy to one place to another, you needed a wagon. Okay. And it was slow. Okay. So messages were slow. The travel was really slow. So in the 1800s, they wanted to make a change. So roads, canals, which is where water, travels through, railroads were really starting to stretch out and try to expand. The thing is, you have to remember, railroads did not connect like they do now. Before, it would be like a railroad starting here in Fresno might connect to Madeira, maybe Modesto, and that was it. That was it. It didn't branch off anywhere else. So you had a bunch of railroad tracks connecting to little places here and there, and that's it. What basically they wanted to do is connect them to one another. Now, in the north, as you can see in the picture right there in the map, there's a lot of green, red, blue lines going around everywhere. Um, that's because the North really wanted the transportation to happen. It helped with the manufacturing goods. Either the things they sell got sent off quicker, or things they needed came to them quicker because of railroads and canals and railroads. But in the South, if you look at the bottom, where like Kentucky, where it says KY, or Tennessee, TENN, the NC, SC, South Carolina, North Carolina, if you notice, there's no green lines. There's very little red lines, and the blue lines, there's a bunch of them because the blue lines were canals, and canals brought water, right? Why did they care about water? Because all they cared about was crops. They saw the roads and railroads as a waste of land. They would be like, "Oh my God, if this railroad came through my land, that section of ground, think of all the cotton, pistachios, peanuts, potatoes, tobacco that I could have grown there, and all that money that's wasted." Now, did they mind if a railroad was on someone else's land? No. Bring it then if it's on someone else's land. But on my land, no, no, I need that land. So they saw it as like they're losing money if a road went through their territory or a railroad. Now, here's the tricky part about this whole thing. In 1806, Congress said we need to fund a highway connecting railroads from one state to another and things like that. But the problem is, can the federal government say, hey, we're going to take some land from you, New York, and we're going to get a railroad to connect you from New York to Philadelphia? You know, could they? Could they? Did they have the right to do that? Could they do that? So politicians argued this whole thing for a long time, and some were saying, yeah, yeah, we should be able to do that. And some politicians said, no, you can't do that. Now, certain states, local towns, and even private businesses were like, wait, wait, we can, how much is it going to cost to get a railroad from this next town to us? Oh, it might cost $1,000. Okay, a private business might say, we'll pitch in $100. The local town might say, we were going to raise taxes so, that we can put in $500. And the state might say, you know what, you guys did that much, we'll cover the rest. Because the northern area, they wanted those um, railroads because it brought people, it brought tourists, it brought money, it brought goods, it sent out goods that were being sold and stuff like that. So the north really saw the potential of railroads and roads. And again, the south, they really didn't care. Now, the Industrial Revolution began in Britain in the mid 1700s. It wouldn't reach the United States till the 1800s. And once it did, though, it changed our economic system and our society forever. Okay. Now, the thing is, we have this thing in economics called free enterprise, where that means is the products, the prices, and the services all depend on you, the buyer. So let's say the new pair of Jordans come out right before the season starts for basketball, and nobody likes them. Nobody wants them. Majority of the time, the Jordans cost like $200, right? If no one buys it, the price is going to drop down more and more and more and more and more. Why? Because no one buys it. Then they're figuring, okay, maybe we should lower the price. Maybe that might get people to buy it. Because the thing is, it does not cost $200 to make those shoes. At most, probably $20, you know, to make the shoes. We're talking the labor, we're talking the material, stuff like that. Okay. You really break it down, it's like $20. So selling it for 200, they're like, okay, if we sell it to 160, we're making a profit. Well, if we sell it down to 100, it's still a profit. So that's why they lower the prices so much, because if no one buys it, they're gonna lower it. And that goes with anything. You choose, you the buyer choose what you want. And if the price is too high, all you got to do is get people not to buy it, and that will lower the price. Okay. The other thing free enterprise did, it really helped the industrial revolution because taxes were really low, and people who had money were ready to invest, especially in new inventions like you see right there, the steam engine. People were like, "Oh my God, this machine! You basically tell me you put water in there, you heat it up, and here's the exhaust, goes out that way, and then the heat makes the pistons move up and down, and because the pistons move, it makes the wheel turn, and it does this." Yeah. Oh my gosh, we could really. There's a lot of potential in this thing. It can make people wouldn't have to do all this stuff. We just had the machine do it. So people started thinking ahead. Now, talking about people thinking ahead, Eli Whitney is a very famous inventor. One of the things he doesn't get credit for is this thing called the interchangeable parts. It sounds like common sense now, but back then it was just like revolutionary. Basically, what happened was back in the day when someone had like a nuts and bolts and stuff like that, and they lost one of them, they couldn't go to the store and buy a new one because the threads and things like that were unique to one another, you know. So if you lost a piece, that was it, or you got to find a way to jerry rig it and make it work. But Eli Whitney said, what if we made a universal bolt, nut, washer, things like that? And that way, if you lose a piece, you could just go to the store and buy a new one. Mind blown. Total, like, why didn't anyone think of this before? Okay. Other factories started to spring up around, like lumber, shoes, leather, wagons. Um, I'm actually going to make a little TikTok video about shoes and how uh, there was no left or right shoe at the very, very beginning. Okay. Now, sewing machines really changed how things were because if you've never seen a sewing machine, the needles they jump up quick, fast, in a hurry. Um, they sew faster than the human can. And thing is, because of that, they could make clothes faster. They made clothes faster. That means they can make more. And when there's more clothes, that means the cheaper the price of the clothes can be. And this is the time where people start actually having more clothes. People could actually fill up their closet with clothing instead of just having like 3 outfits or 5 outfits. Now they can have 10, 15, and the price would be cheaper than the stuff they had because it wasn't made by hand, it was made by machine. Um, Canned foods was perfected. Now, believe it or not, back in the day, when sometimes you would buy canned food like peaches or corn or whatever, and you opened it up, sometimes if it wasn't, done right, you would open up and there'd be mold. It'd be like dark web looking mold. Um, but in the 1800s, they perfected it to the point where anytime you opened it, it was good. And that meant you could store it for longer. It was easier to transport. And you didn't have to worry about the food spoiling. Okay. Um, some students have asked me in the past, is because they were watching like shows like The Walking Dead, could you eat a canned food that was like 2 years old? Yes and no. If it's, dented or the top or bottom is like kind of curved, no, don't eat that. That's spoiled. Um, but you can eat it if it's not either one of those ways. Um, is it going to be fresh? Heck no. No way. But if you're starving, technically you can eat it. Okay. The last thing is in 1832, Samuel F.B. Morse perfected the telegram. He didn't invent it, he perfected it. And one of the ways he perfected it is by creating the Morse code. Now these are dots and dashes that represents letters, and they would be like dee 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 dee, you know, and people would hear it and write down the letters, and that way messages can be sent from one place of the country to another almost instantaneously. This was revolutionary because, again, it took sometimes weeks or months for news to travel, you know. So journalists were the first people to really take advantage of the Morse code, telling people in from Chicago to New York, this is what's going on here. So people were from like New York, Washington D.C., Philadelphia. They had a lot of wires coming in. In total, by right before the Civil War started, there were 50,000 miles worth of wire along the east coast of our country. That's a lot. Now, here is your question. Do you think President Monroe really cared about the Latin American countries? So when he was telling those other countries around the world, don't come here, you know, respect these countries' borders and sovereignty, let them be. Do you think he really cared, or do you think he has something going on, something up his sleeve? What do you think? Okay. The writing prompts on the bottom there for you to help you if you don't know how to start the sentence. Okay. Take advantage of that, guys. All right. So, with that being said, that's it for this lesson. So, hopefully, you learned something new. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. Um, so, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.